that question was saying, John, what is the difference between C4FM? What is the difference between Yaesu System Fusion? What is the difference between Wires X? And that's kind of what we led with today for this topic. As Mark said, Fusion's been out there 2013. Does anybody know real quick, history real quick, does anybody know when the actual concept of Fusion was put on a piece of paper? When? Wrong. That's when that was published. Does everybody know? 2010. You been in my class before? Oh, okay. Yeah, you have. Don't answer. So, does anybody here work for Motorola? Okay, good. So, here's why. So, we used to be, anybody remember a little company called Yaesu Vertex Standard? Yeah. So, that was our LMR commercial division, right? And we had some really, really great sales staff back in like 2009, 2010. And they went into this small little city on the East Coast. It's called New York. Probably never heard of it. But they went into the New York Port Authority and they sold a whole bunch of Vertex radios. That upset a company that begins with M and ends in Motorola. Okay? We didn't say the name. So their theory and philosophy is if you can't beat them, buy them. So what happened is, everybody remember what happened in 2010? Is that any? What happened? Motorola bought us. They bought Vertex Standard Yaesu. So what ended up happening was about 2012 rolls around, and sorry Motorola, you don't care about amateur, you don't care about marine, you don't care about aviation. Guess what we did? We bought ourselves back. But guess what happened during those 2 years? We couldn't do any forward progression on any of our digital voice products. Because what also uses C4FM and FDMA? P25. And what does Motorola sell? P25. So with that happening, Fusion actually got tabled for 2 years. It still stayed on the napkin, as we joked around, and was there. But once we bought ourselves back in 2012, we then kicked it into full gear, and then that's when we actually introduced Yaesu System Fusion, like Mark said, at the TAPR conference. Now, the reason I bring this up is because Fusion was a concept, and you've heard me say it numerous times. It has 3 main important concepts and functions. And what are they?
Selling radios?
Close. No, what the concept of Fusion is, at first it had to be high quality digital voice, okay? Had to be ease of use of operation, and had to be versatile and flexible. That was the 3 main core principles that Fusion always had to do with and dealt with. What ended up happening in that case, as time went on and we proceeded through it, we found out that it was great, it met all those qualities and characteristics, but one of the things is that it needed to evolve. And if you don't have something that evolves, it's not going to do well. It's going to stay there. So we introduced Yaesu System Fusion, kind of a set of easy concepts on there. Started out with the FTM 100, FTM 400, the FT1, and then the HRI 200. We then soon came out with the DR1. Now the DR1 was a beta test. We gave it out to clubs, hey, test it, Clubs took part of it, they did all these great things with it and everything, and they said, hey, we got some great ideas. Those clubs that were able to participate wrote back, we came out with the DR1X. That was generation 1. We had DSQ back then, which was a type of signaling. It worked, there was some refinements. So 2017, technically into 2017 came, and we introduced Yaesu System Fusion 2. Now System Fusion 2 was the 2nd generation, but everybody was freaked. They thought, oh my goodness, the old radios aren't going to go ahead and be compatible anymore, this and this and this and this. We said, no. The 2nd generation just changes some things for better operation. We came out with the DR2X repeater. We came out with some improvements to Wires X, and we came out with improvements to the radio and some signaling processes on it. Everything was backwards compatible. So now here we are, 2026, and we've been releasing a suite of products on there that are doing what we're now moving into, as you see on the screen here, of Yaesu System Fusion 3, the 3rd generation of it. And the 3rd generation is focusing heavily on infrastructure and connectivity and networking. Okay, so it started out, believe it or not, with our FTX1. And we're going to cover a little bit about what I mean by that in a minute here, but we're going to kind of go through the slides here a little bit and kind of talk a little bit about helping you understand what Wires X is before you see how it ties into System Fusion Generation 3. So the question is how many people actually use Wires X? Okay, perfect. All right, good. So that question that we kind of said in there, what is C4FM, what is Fusion, what is Wires X? So C4FM is the digital voice protocol that we use. Right? System Fusion is the name we give to our technology because it fuses together analog and digital. Now you don't have to raise your hand, or if the person is in here, which you think of right now, you don't have to point them out. But how many people have Fusion repeaters in their clubs, and when the idea of digital voice was brought up, it was like Walter from Jeff Dunham and digital was the devil. Okay, don't point out the people here, folks. Let's keep it civil. Let's keep it civil. All right. So what we realized that, right? And you've heard me talk about this before, and this is why I like Fusion even before I started with Yaesu, because I've been playing with Fusion since it first got introduced. It gives a cool concept, what I like to call no ham left behind. So if you don't have people who like digital, can the system still operate in analog? Yes. If you don't like people that like analog, can the system be operated in digital? Yes. And can it be operated in AMS? Yes. That was a key part, and that's why we call it Yaesu System Fusion. But the aspect of Wires X is a means to link. And this was an important thing. And the reason it was an important thing is because, you've heard me tell this story numerous times, I checked again today, the amount of repeaters in Japan that are Yaesu System Fusion are 0. Okay? Because there's a certain organization out there, we won't say names, but they kind of have like an R and an L in it, and then a J and an A, and they voted to say they don't allow, because the JARL is sort of like the ARRL and the FCC like had a baby. Okay, that's the best way to describe it. And they said, nope, Fusion cannot be allowed as a digital voice mode. Well, this is a problem, right? Because Simplex works great, but it only goes so far. So we came up with Wires X. And does anybody know what the X in Wires X actually means? The reason it's called Wires X is because it stands for cross modulation. Wires X is the only type of digital voice technology out there that is automatically built in, that you can have a user go in on digital and you can have a user go in on analog, and the network will cross for you. You don't have to do any sort of things with your radio, and it gives that theory of fusing the two different voice technologies together. But Wires X was born out of Wires 2. Anybody ever hear Wires 2? Okay. How many people have ever used Wires 2? Okay. We're a dying breed, brother. All right. So, reason being, and what the whole point of Wires 2 was, it was a concept of saying, we're going to go and have a system set up where we have the ability to talk a radio to radio. So we put a radio in a house, and we put another radio in a house, and you can talk together. Or we have the ability to take and put this device connected to a repeater, and that can connect to another repeater. And we're so clever on the naming, guess what we called this device that connected to the nodes and radios? The HRI 100. That's why we call it the 200. So what happened as part of this also too is we then allowed you to create sister radio groups. So a sister radio group, as you see on there, is that your Wires 2 node was connected, and by simply doing an easy command on your radio, you can connect to a sister group of radios. Now, we call it the Wires button. For those that don't know what it is, if you have an older radio, it is now what, as I pointed out in class yesterday, it is now what I've heard referred to as the Big Bang Theory logo, which is a little kind of like atom symbol. It was an atom symbol, but it's the Big Bang Theory logo now, I guess, from the Utes. And then, if you had your sister group, you had your friend group. Well, the way you did it was you programmed in that number into that Wires X button, or not Wires X, excuse me, Wires button, and you push it, and then you key up, and then it delays it for a second or two, sends the DTMF tones, and then it opens up the voice. How many people have pushed down on their radios and they got really upset? You've had it, you've done it, you're like, why is this radio beeping? We get calls all the time on all the radios for it. But that's what the concept was. It was like sister groups and friend groups and stuff. And when we were going from Wires 2, which by the way was created in our office in California, we said, we got to change that up if we're doing Wires X. So what we did is, instead of having sister groups, we created a node-to-node concept. So node-to-node is simply, hey, I'm talking on one Wires X node, and it's directly connected to another Wires X node. And then we created, instead of friends groups, sister groups, those kind of things, we created rooms. Now with that, with rooms, we went along and now you could do a couple things, which you see on the picture here. Not only can you have multiple people together, and if I talk into that room, it goes out to everybody, but you can also, as you see on the display here, you could go in analog, you could talk to digital users. Or you can go in digital and talk to analog users. You can go in digital to digital or analog to analog. The network cross-modulates it for you. That was a key concept because now places that don't have repeaters, places that want people to connect to one another and use digital voice, it allows that. So who does not have a Yaesu System Fusion radio in here? Does anybody have one? Okay. After today, we'll get you one. Okay. You're gonna have to buy it, but we'll make you drink the Kool-Aid. Grape or orange? Okay, Eric. So here, so can I pick on you for a second? Okay. So I got a digital radio, you have an analog radio. We want to talk together. Will that work? No. So who wins? Do you buy a digital radio to talk to me in digital, or do I have to put my digital radio in analog? That's the question. And that's what Wires X solved. Now, it was great. It was going good. How many people were here in 2018? We were in the old building or the other building back then. Was anybody here for 2018? Okay, does anybody remember what we talked about in 2018? No? We talked about this. Because before, Wires X needed an HRI 200, it needed to have a mobile radio, and it needed to be connected to a PC, and you had to have ports open, you had to have this and this and this and this. Okay, that doesn't work. Okay, it really doesn't work. Because now you can't take it portable. Like, I'm gonna go to the hotel and, well, it's Ham Vengeance, so they know radio stuff at the hotel. But your normal hotel, you're gonna get put on a list, folks. If you come walking in there with a mobile radio, a power supply, a computer, an HRI 200, and you call down the front desk, hi, how you doing? I'm Mr. Crook in room 203. I need UDP ports 46100 through 46122 open, and I need a static global non-NAT IP address. You're going to get a knock on your door, okay? You're going to. So what we talked about in 2018 is what happens on the left side of that screen, where we said, hey, HRI 200, I say nay, nay. Let's go ahead and have it so you can directly connect your radio to a PC with just one cable, and you can talk on Wires X. Well, that's pretty cool. And we talked about it, how we said, okay, you're gonna have a radio to talk to a radio, and you're gonna do that like on that picture there. Well, many of you afterwards who were there came up to me and said, John, great idea. Yeah, thanks. It's an idiot job. What now? So they said, why do I have to use a radio? Why can't I just use a microphone and a speaker on the radio? Okay, that's cool. All right, I don't want to just talk to digital stations. What about the analog users? Can you do that? And we're like, okay. And then, hey, what if we made it so you could use it in direct mode now, as we know it? And what if we use it in access point now mode, and we just switch by hitting a button? Okay, great idea. So then we took that to the drawing board, and then we went along and said, hey, here's a great idea. Japan, do this. And then in the end of 2018, Yaesu System Fusion 2 Wires X, in essence, version, came out, and you now had PDN operation. Now, what are the things about Wires X? We keep it as a closed network. I'm not going to hide or deny that at all. It's a closed proprietary network. And the reason we have to do that is we want to keep it an amateur radio network. If we had an open network like this, we could all, I think, safely agree, can go in our minds and think of how someone could turn it into a free business network, or use it to like link GMRS repeaters or link commercial repeaters, stuff like that. So we do have steps you have to go through for Wires X registration. Now the biggest thing I want to start out with Wires X registration is two concepts I want you to walk out of here with today. Remember nothing else, just these two. One, you do have to register for a Wires X node, okay? That registration is tied specifically to that node and radio. Meaning, my registration for Wires X is my ID is tied to that radio, and if I ever sell that radio, in essence, I need to deactivate it, okay? Number two, you do not have to register radios to use Wires X if you are a user, okay? How many people are familiar with D-Star and DMR in here? And P25 and all this, right? What's one thing you have to do for DMR P25 next then? What do you got to do? Get a radio ID, right? What about D-Star? Register with the trust server, right? You don't do that with Fusion. The only radio you need to register for Wires X is the radio that's going to be physically connected to the computer. Okay? And if you have 2 radios you might have on at one time, I have 7 Wires X nodes running at my house at any one time. All right? It's because of testing and stuff. I'm not that important of a guy that I got to hop between 7 different rooms and stuff like that. I like to think that I am, but I'm not. But we test things out. We talk to the office. I know I've seen a few people here where you guys were having Wires X trouble. I said, come to this room, test it with me real quick. We can do some of that testing remotely on there. But you don't have to do it. So if you have 4 handhelds and 5 mobiles, you do not need to register all of them. You need to register the one device that is going to be connected to your computer. And we stress that a lot because people think that I need to register with every radio. But then what's worst part about it is they forget that each registration is per radio. So what people will do is they'll register one radio, then they log back into their account, and then they try to register another radio. You don't create a second registry. What's happening is you're replacing the first registry, because each registration is associated to one specific DTMF ID, which is associated to one specific radio on there. Member registration is pretty simple, pretty easy, okay? You go through there, you fill out a form. Once you fill out the form, you're gonna get this form back here, and it's gonna say, yeah, this is your information, and here's your DTMF node and ID. Then you're gonna go ahead and plug it into the system. The first time you connect your radio to the Wires X software, you wanna make sure that little